So a massive matchup in the world of international rugby is just around the corner. Ireland versus New Zealand, a rematch from the quarterfinals of the last World Cup, and that game was epic from start to finish, and this one at the Aviva should be no different. And in this preview, we'll be looking through at the lineups that have been selected, the key players as well as those head-to-heads, couple stats along the way, and then at the end, a prediction. And I have to say, throughout this year, there have been some tough games to predict, but I do think this one will be the most difficult. But jumping straight into it, first of all, looking through at the starting sides, the All Blacks, they did announce their side at 5 a.m. New Zealand time. We ended up doing an all-nighter to get that announcement out there, and they didn't make too many changes compared to what we saw up against the English, only really switching out injured players, that being Cody Taylor and Beauden Barrett. But the front row will be Tamaiti Williams, number 2 Asafa Moore, and number 3 Tyrell Lomax. So Tamaiti Williams keeping his spot in that starting front row. Asafa Moore, after playing 76 minutes last week up against the English, once again called upon here, which does bring George Bell off the bench. In the locking duo will be the captain Scott Barrett as the number 4 and number 5 Tupavai. Now, he did have a little bit of an injury in the last game up against the English, which actually brought him off around half-time. Patrick Tuipulotu making his way onto the field and bringing quite the impact with him, and that is why they've decided to have him off the bench for this game rather than starting, to be able to change the matchup in the second half. So it does seem to be when the opposition start to tire, that is when we see Patrick Tuipulotu start to fire. That wasn't supposed to rhyme. But he is a very great impact player to have off the bench for the All Blacks, so look forward to seeing him later on in the contest. In the loose forward trio, no changes from last week. Number 6, Wallace Satiti, one of the standouts from the game up against England. Number 7, Sam Cane, who had a great game up against Ireland the last time these two sides met. And then number 8, Ardie Savia. So I am curious to see this trio in action, definitely when you hear who Ireland have got in their loose forward trio. In the backline, Cortez Ratama keeps his spot at number 9, with Damian McKenzie slotting in as the 10. In the centres, it is Geordie Barrett at number 12. He'll be heading to Leinster in 2025, so he will be going head-to-head with a few of his future teammates. And then number 13, Rico Ioane, had a bit of a hand cut in the last game up against England, but is okay to play in this contest. In the back three, it will be Caleb Clark out on one wing, Mark Talia out on the other, who managed to score himself 2 tries in his last performance. And then at number 15, once again, the All Blacks sticking with Will Jordan, but that is the All Blacks starting XP. Looking through at this Irish side, in the front row, it is Andrew Porter, Ronan Kelleher, and also Finlay Bealham. Now, a big hit for Ireland is the fact that they haven't got Tyke Furlong. They also don't have Dan Sheehan, and he is a master when it comes to getting that rolling maul moving in the right direction. But Ronan Kelleher, he is a decent option to replace him, but I'm sure that they will miss Tyke Furlong for this matchup. Joe McCarthy and James Ryan will be the locking duo, with the loose forward trio being made up of Tyburn at number 6, Josh Van den Vlaar number 7, and number 8, Caelan Dorsey is also the captain for this Irish side. And that loose forward trio, they can be game changers. And I feel like, to be honest, New Zealand, there has been a lot of criticism around their loose forward trio involving Sam Cane, even though he isn't going to be playing next year. Savia at 8, some people still want to see that man transition to 7, and then Wallace Satiti, who is a number 8, but has found a home playing at number 6 for the All Blacks. And these three who they are going head-to-head with, the Irish trio, they are going to be a handful. They are going to get in those breakdowns, win the turnovers, make a lot of meters amongst them. So the ABs have to be on their A game. And for this Irish trio, that is the only type of game that these three know. Looking through at the backline, Jamison Gibson Park back at international level as the number 9. Number 10, Jack Crowley. Now, the last time that these two sides met, Johnny Sexton was at the helm. Jack Crowley, he has had quite a few minutes since that Rugby World Cup, and he's looked strong throughout the URC, so I feel like he can handle this pressure, definitely going up against someone like a Damian McKenzie here. If it was Beauden Barrett, could be a different story, but McKenzie and Crowley, I feel like there are some similarities in the way that those two play, so it could be quite an awesome matchup to see them go face to face. In the midfield, it is Bundyaki at number 12, a ball of muscle with a lot of hustle. I need to stop rhyming, but he is a great player. Bundyaki, he's got size, he's got strength, and then on the outside, Gary Ringrose with plenty of pace to to match that physicality. In the back three, it is going to be number 11, James Lowe, number 14, Mac Hansen, and number 15 to close out this Irish side. They have gone with Hugo Keenan. So those are the starting lineups. Once again, very strong for both of these sides. And there are plenty of key players and head-to-head battles that we will see out there on the park. The first one I'm going to mention is Caelan Doris versus Ardie Savea. Now, these two have both experienced being a captain in their time. Caelan Doris, very new to the situation. Ardie Savea, he's been there, done that, but Doris has been phenomenal for the last couple of years. Savea putting together some great numbers throughout the Rugby Championship, although in the game up against England was a little bit quiet. So I'm curious to see how he bounces back from there. They talked about it quite a bit during the week, that Savea did the little things so that Satiti could do the big things. Now, that is all well and good, but if they try and shut down Satiti, that's where we're going to need to see Ardie Savea take it up to that next level, really put in the hard yards, and I know that he can do it. Doris can do the same, and when he's partnered with Josh van den Vlaar, of course that is a dream duo for this Irish side. Looking through at the number 12 jersey, Bundy Aki versus Geordie Barrett. Now, if Barrett plays like he did last week up against England, Bundy Aki will, in the nicest way possible, destroy him. It's not going to be easy out there on the park with Bundy, but when he's in form, and if Barrett is not, we could see some really good stuff coming from this Irish backline. And one thing that they do extremely well is shift the ball. And that is something New Zealand weren't able to do too often up against England. We didn't see Rico really touch the ball that much. We didn't see it get out to Caleb Clark, with the exception of maybe one pass and a cross kick from Beauden Barrett. So a lot of that comes down to the halfback, the fly half, and your inside centre. So Barrett not being partnered with the other Barrett. In this case, it will be Barrett and McKenzie. So we will have to wait and see how that combination goes. We've seen it before, but Bundy Aki and Jack Crowley, definitely a combo to keep an eye on there. And the last head-to-head, James Lowe versus Mark Talia. Now, Talia managed to score himself 2 tries last week up against England, including a last-minute one, which in the end was the match winner for New Zealand. He's an extremely hard man to tackle. Any game that he plays in, he's right up there in the top 3, if not number 1, for defenders beaten. James Lowe, he is an interesting player. He's found up and down form throughout the last 24 months or so, but one thing that he brings definitely up against New Zealand is plenty of passion. And I feel like we saw that throughout the Rugby World Cup quarter-final. Even when things at times weren't quite going his way, you could still see how hard he was trying to get Ireland on the front foot. And in this game, if he can shut down Mark Talia and really test Talia's defence, because that is something I believe England didn't do enough of. We saw what his defence was like in July when the All Blacks went up against the English, and he conceded quite a few tries out on that wing, whereas last week, for the English anyway, they just couldn't really get into a position to test him out. So I think that's something that James Lowe will be able to bring, and that also partners with what I was saying before, with the fact that this Irish backline, if it can shift the ball quickly and they can get it to who they need to, they can find a lot of meters in this game. The All Blacks have been missing tackles. Their discipline, something else to mention. We saw many penalties conceded in the last game, and handling wasn't too flash either. So it just makes it that little bit more intriguing that these two sides within the top 3 will now be going head to head. But looking through at a few of the interesting stats, since 2016, the Irish have played New Zealand 9 times and they have won 5 of them. They actually have the highest winning percentage up against New Zealand since 2016, winning over 50%. The next closest side is South Africa, who have won 41% of their matchups up against the All Blacks since then. But before that stage, of course, that is where the Springboks do have the edge over the Irish, because before 2016, Ireland had never beaten New Zealand. They had tried many times, and the closest that they had was a draw. But ever since that 2016 game taking place in the USA, something changed for this Irish outfit. And now, anytime they go head-to-head with New Zealand, it is extremely close. We saw it in the quarterfinal of the Rugby World Cup, how it was literally inches away from the Irish claiming a spot in their first ever semi-final, but instead Sam Whitelock, a man who is not playing in this game, was able to get that last minute penalty. But that brings us on now to a prediction for this game. Like I said earlier on, I think this is the hardest game to predict that we have done throughout 2024. Now, some would argue the All Blacks versus the Springboks was a tricky one, but in both of those games, I predicted that South Africa would win by a thin margin, and that is exactly what they were able to do. I was actually on a bit of a roll with the predictions throughout the Rugby Championship, and of course I have to bring it up now because since then we've sucked at the prediction side of things. So we've got to take the good with the bad, and this prediction might be bad. But I'm going to say that the Irish, honestly, even though they haven't played an international game for quite some time, and normally that does impact the way that sides play, this New Zealand side is so unpredictable that honestly, if they play well and they fix those errors that they had last week up against England, and Ireland have a little bit of rust, we could see the All Blacks win this game by 10 to 15 points. But do I think that's going to happen? Probably not. I think that this one's going to be decided by 5 or less. And I'm actually going to say that Ireland at the Aviva get the job done. I'll go 26 points to 22. But if New Zealand can fire, like I mentioned, they have not found their stride as of yet. And once they do, that is a very dangerous team. But until then, that is when they've got a few weaknesses that other teams can exploit. So I'm going the Irish to win it by 4, but it could go either way, and it's going to be an epic game. And we will be doing the commentary on the channel. It is kicking off at 9:10 a.m. New Zealand time on Saturday morning, or 8:10 p.m. for you guys in Ireland. Two great sides going head-to-head to start off the international weekend of rugby. Doesn't get much better than that. Later on, we get to see England versus Australia, Scotland versus South Africa, Wales, Fiji. They're all taking place. We'll be covering them all on the channel as well. But thank you all very much for tuning in. Do let me know your score predictions in the comments down below, as well as who you think player-wise will step up in this contest. I feel like there are a few that need big games here, and perhaps we could see it. Like I said, no matter what, these two sides will bring it, and I am counting down the hours until this match does kick off. But thank you all very much for tuning in. If you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you all for the next one.